Marvel cards are slowly on the rise, and it's got a lot of Marvel card collectors really excited. Can 2022 be the year of Marvel cards? While I'm optimistic and hopeful for it, I'm also approaching it with a little bit of caution. And it has something to do with what's been going on in the sports card collecting and investing scene. Now, before we get into any type of Marvel card talk, I kind of want to talk about the brief history of comic books and its progression in pop culture to help establish a baseline of where we've been, how we got here, and where we're going in the future to help us kind of understand the future potential of Marvel cards in this collectible space. So if you're ready, let's go ahead and get right to it. So comic books. The source material for these characters, these movies, these cards have been around for a very long time. You could date it back all the way to the late 19th century, early 1900s. I mean, when I was a kid growing up in the 80s and 90s, you couldn't really admit that you collected comic books or read them because you'd be called a nerd. But there were a lot of things that kind of helped push comic books forward in the pop culture space. But in my opinion, it wasn't until Sam Raimi's Spider-Man in which comic books got a huge boost in pop culture. And with the advent of the MCU, all bets were off. And now Marvel is one of the leading properties in today's pop culture society. So you can see why people are excited at the potential of Marvel cards. With this big reach that Marvel properties have, there's a lot of room to grow for Marvel cards. And that's what's gotten a lot of people excited. But we got to be careful because I've seen this before. And history has a way of repeating itself. And all we need to do is look at what happened in the sports card market and follow the path of the sports card investor to kind of understand and see what may happen in the Marvel card space if we're not too careful. Roughly about 2 years ago, the sports card market saw a huge influx of people coming into the hobby. It was a mixture of brand new people coming in, whether it were investors or sneaker flippers, as well as people returning back to the hobby after being away for so long. But one of the major reasons a lot of people jumped into the hobby is because they saw how much money was actually being made. It was easy to buy a card, get it graded, and then flip it for a huge return on investment. So everyone was jumping in, and it caused the sports card market to really boom to the point where everyone thought sports cards were going to the moon. However, fast forward to today, and we've hit a huge market correction within the past year in which a lot of these cards that a lot of people were buying and flipping aren't really worth that much anymore. And the only things that do have some sort of value are your rare cards, your low pop cards, or your numbered parallels. So where do Marvel cards fit in all of this? Well, do you remember the slight uptick in the 1990 Marvel Universe trading cards? I certainly do. I think it was around October of 2020 when I started hearing rumblings of Marvel being the next big thing amongst sports card collectors and investors. You see, you have to understand that during this time, and I think it still happens to this day, people are trying to find the next big thing in which they can make money off of. So we started with your traditional sports cards, basketball, baseball, football, and then it bled into soccer, and then it bled into Pokemon even. F1 saw its time, UFC saw its time, and if it wasn't for the shutdown of PSA, then Marvel would have started a lot sooner because it was starting to gain momentum. But when PSA shut down, no one could have gotten those 1990 Marvel Universe trading cards graded and flipped. And I know a lot of Marvel collectors were scratching their heads thinking to themselves, why 1990 Marvel Universe trading cards? I mean, you guys probably had binders full of them in your closet. You probably had stacks of sealed boxes tucked away that you probably bought in clearance. It just didn't really make sense. You were seeing PSA 10s of these cards selling for hundreds and even thousands of dollars. But you have to understand this as well. It was during the time that ran parallel in the sports card market in which base cards were popping. Base cards were the ones that were selling for a lot. So if you took that mentality that these common base cards were selling for hundreds and almost thousands of dollars, then you can certainly equate it to the 1990 Marvel Universe trading cards. Rarely anybody was looking at rarity at that time. Now fast forward to today and the recent sales in precious metal gems. I mean, you're seeing these things pop up everywhere. You're seeing sports card content creators talk about it. You're seeing Marvel content creators talking about it. You're seeing Instagram posts pop up everywhere with the hashtag Marvel cards, baby. With PMGs, while fantastic, and I'm a big fan of PMGs myself, you have to understand that PMGs occupy a very rarefied space in which there's crossover appeal among sports card collector and investors and Marvel card collectors. Because one of the hottest sets out there is the 1997-98 Fleer Metal basketball cards and its precious metal gems, which were numbered out of 100, and the first 10 were stamped green, while the rest of them were done in red. It's probably one of the holy grail sets in all of basketball cards, if not the holy grail set of basketball cards, because it's just so hard to obtain. And a lot of people understand this, and that's why they've been gravitating towards PMGs because of its rarity. And the sports card market has kind of smartened up. Instead of following the base cards, they're starting to go for rarity and numbered cards. So we're seeing that same thought process mimicked and paralleled here in the Marvel Universe. Now, one of my biggest concerns is that when you get an influx of brand new people entering the hobby, collectibles start shooting up to the moon, we tend to overshoot the true market value of these items. And it's due to, that frenzy, that FOMO, that hype, and it gets to the point where someone's going to be left holding the bag. And that's the last thing that I want for anybody that's entering this hobby or entering this market. What you want is you want people to come in and stay for the long run, because that helps keep the hobby supported and helps keep these prices afloat. If people are just coming in chasing the green, and I'm not talking about green PMGs, but I'm talking about the money, then as soon as that money is not there anymore, or as soon as money can't be made, they quickly jump off and move to the next big thing. You can kind of consider these sports card investors like Galactus, the devourer of worlds, whereas instead of worlds, they're devouring niches and trying to make their money. That's my only concern. And I wish that people will come to stay for the true beauty of these Marvel cards and not just chase the money and think of it as really good investments, rather as really cool pieces of art, really cool pieces of collectibles, because the Marvel space is more than just PMGs. There's a lot of great cards out there, and it doesn't always have to be the rare items. So if you're going to come in and you don't have the deep pockets to compete with these investors or people with deep pockets, then do your research, do your due diligence, find out what other sets are out there, because there's a lot of great things that Marvel cards have to offer. But if PMGs are your thing and you want a little piece of eye candy, you can watch any one of these videos here that I made back early last year. I would probably say around March or so. None of those cards are for sale. None of those cards are for trade. And with that being said, my name is Josh, and I'll see you guys in the next video later.